An Introduction to Freud's Theory of Personality. Freud, A Final Evaluation, Part 7 of 7. Dr. Michael Botwin, Department of Psychology, California State University, Fresno. Well, let's complete our analysis of Freud's issues by summing up an evaluation of his work, but let's start with a cartoon. So, Freud's been completely discredited. And to think how much I've forked out for analysis over the years, and the woman starts sobbing. And you pull back to a bigger screen and you see her sitting on a Freudian therapist's couch with the therapist saying, "You want to talk about it?" And the woman saying, "You bet." Now, one of the things that I find fascinating about Freudians, not necessarily theory, is that for them, it's largely a belief system. My office mate in grad school was an arch Freudian. And after hearing me talk about Freud and my undergraduate intro psych level Freud lecture, Jonathan pulls me aside and says, "You know, you can't teach this as nuts and bolts theory. You have to get the feeling for it, not the science of it." At which point I thought even less of Freudian theory and of Jonathan. So let's look at some criticism of Freud's theory. Freud's theory is primarily, for us, of historical value and doesn't really inform us a lot about current research in modern personality psychology. There have been some places where Freud's theory has informed scholars, as we've already talked about with defense mechanisms in the work of repression, but those are few and far between. And one of the big criticisms, at least from a modern perspective on personality psychology, is Freud didn't believe in doing experiments or hypothesis testing. He wasn't worried about external validity of his ideas. If you read the preface to The Interpretation of Dreams, Freud's most important work, you can tell he's a little narcissistic as he talks about how there should be a plaque placed on the outside of a restaurant saying that here is where Herr Dr. Freud developed the idea of studying dreams. I don't know about you, but I'm not wanting people to post plaques around, discussing how great I am all over the place. Another criticism of Freud's work is it relied on a group of case studies by select wealthy women who helped him generate his theory. Their cases, not the women. And one of the things that must be remembered is that to be psychoanalyzed required substantial resources. And so if you were going to be psychoanalyzed by Freud, you had to be pretty stinking rich. So there's some classist stuff going on here with Freud's theory as well. Furthermore, it was very in vogue, or if you want to use more modern parlance, cool, to be psychoanalyzed by Freud. He was the most important analyst in Vienna, and many individuals vied for his time. And scholars believe he may have had several individuals who simply made up what they thought would be interesting symptoms for Freud to analyze so they could have the bragging rights to say, "I am one of Sigmund Freud's patients." Feminists, as you can imagine, find Freud's theory extremely sexist. It's extremely male-centric. It's built on the notion of the traditional Victorian era family, which may not have even existed in those times, but you have the father as master and commander, the mother as second in charge, and the children there to obey and not be heard. When you look at Gloria Steinem's rather brilliant essay on what if Freud was a woman, you'll see that you can just as easily do as she did and flip-flop the standard Freudian theory from a male-centric view to a female-centric view. In fact, in some ways, I think her theory makes more sense than Freud's does. Also, Freud's theory is bound in its time, and it may not apply to modern society with different dynamics, different technology. You have to remember, in the late 19th and early to mid 20th century, society was very different. And most of Freud's ideas don't translate well to modern times, which is one of the reasons they appear so strange to us. Also, and I'm one of these folks, I think that Freud takes an extremely negative view on human nature. You'll see in our next theory, the work of Carl Jung, a major difference in that Jung is a very positive person compared to Freud. Well, the next time you run across a person who asks you, "Are you analyzing me?" hopefully now you're more well-armed to actually discuss what was going on with Freud. And finally, remember Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. So here's mine. I hope you learned something from your Freudian experience just now. This is my official Bob Zaney, a Bob and Tom Show comedian, plastic cigar. And gotta give some props to Zaney because he's a hilarious guy. And where else could I find a fake cigar? But sometimes a fake cigar is a fake cigar. I'll let you evaluate Freud as you would on your own. This is Dr. B signing off for now. This has been a We Have Couches video production. Copyright 2020, Professor Michael Botwin, all rights reserved.